returned to the United States to go to college, and he stayed here, served as an imam in San Diego and in Northern Virginia. And again, goes to snow his tail, ends up in Yemen via the UK. Was in jail in Yemen for some time, for a year or so, I believe. And once he gets out, ties in directly with Al-Qaeda in the Peninsula and becomes probably the most significant English language inciter of violence in the Western world that we've seen. Just remarkably effective in terms of his ability to reach out and engage English-speaking Muslims who are interested in this type of extremist activity, to inspire them, to get people to advance a little bit further down the path than they may have without an encouragement from somebody such as him. Was tied directly to several plots and was cited as an inspiration in numerous other plots. He operated online too. He had a website, a blog that was relatively active, and he interacted with people on this blog. He would respond, he would go back and forth in the comments section. We traded emails with individuals. So a very interesting individual who again, posed some significant challenges for the United States in terms of inciting violent activity here in the United States from overseas, but an American citizen, ultimately killed in the drone strike last year. Okay, one other organization that I want to talk about is an organization called Revolution Muslim, again based here in the United States and tied very closely with ITS. In fact, Yusuf Al-Khattab, I mentioned, was one of the key figures within ITS. He co-founded Revolution Muslim in 2008 with an individual named Yunus Abdullah Muhammad. You see their born names up there: Joseph Cohen, was Yusuf Al-Khattab, Jesse Moore, and Yunus Abdullah Muhammad. These individuals founded Revolution Muslim as a more provocative, more extreme organization than ITS had been to date. They delighted in sort of confronting mainstream Muslims, challenging mainstream Muslims, calling them out for not being good Muslims, so to speak, and incited or targeted Muslim organizations as well as the broader American population. They courted the media, they welcomed media spotlight, and again, like these other organizations, they were very careful to try to stay on the right side of the law and maintain their ability to push information out by not openly advocating violence here in the U.S. But as we'll see in a few minutes, they got themselves into a little bit of trouble in that area. A couple of quotes from them. Yunus Abdullah Muhammad preached that U.S. troops, as well as the September 11th targets, were legitimate targets. As he said, until America changes its nature in the international arena, they stated that Osama bin Laden was their role model. In 2009, they took a lot of heat in the aftermath of the Fort Hood shootings. They posted a message on their webpage that said, quote, Major Nadal Hassan, MD, an officer and a gentleman was injured while partaking in a preemptive attack. Get well soon, Major Nadal, we love you. So clearly their sympathies are quite apparent to anybody who's looking at them. And of course, this is an issue of concern. Like ITS, in terms of numbers, the actual membership is probably very small. A couple dozen individuals who consistently showed up to events, but their significant impact was in the online community. Their website was very active. They claimed at its height it received 1,500 hits a day, mostly from Americans. I'm not sure how accurate that figure is. Their YouTube channel had almost 1,000 subscribers. Maybe half of them were actually IP addresses that could be traced back to Langley, Virginia, but who knows? Nonetheless, a significant number of individuals who were consuming this material. And what they also did was encourage a network. So users who would go on their channels and view their videos would then create their own channels and create their own videos. And this sort of spiral web network gets pushed out there to individuals who might not be actual members of this organization, but who are affiliated with it, pass through it, know its members, share some of the same beliefs, share material. Al-Awlati's material was regularly posted on the Revolution Muslim website. So they were very, very active in terms of pushing information out there and then letting people consume it, do with it what they will. Right? So again, while they still said that they didn't support or advocate for violence here in the U.S., obviously they were concerned. In fact, Al-Khattab in November of 2009 actually left the organization because he felt they were going down too extreme a path that he was not comfortable with. And that left the organization in the hands of Yunus Abdullah Muhammad. And we'll come back to sort of where he ends up. So while the actual organizations themselves are not directly tied into specific plots or specific violent activities, activity here in the United States, we do see significant crossover and significant correlation between individuals who traverse through this community and who did participate in violent activity here in the United States. So when we look at one study that was done, looking at the 15-month period of 2009-2010, of the 23 jihadist-based cases that we saw here in the United States, 7 of them tie back to the Revolution Muslim Network. So again, while the organization itself is not planning these attacks, individuals affiliated with it are certainly getting engaged in a much more concerning activity. So obviously an issue that is of concern. And again, it goes back to this idea that when we talk about issues like self-radicalization or lone wolves, I would almost call into question the use of some of these terms. Yes, there are lone wolves, but a lot of the individuals that we often highlight in the press as being lone wolves don't really meet that description. They may be lone plotters, and that the plots they are executing or attempting to execute are executed either on their own or with the able assistance of an undercover or informant. The individuals don't come out of nowhere. They're not created in a vacuum, right? They're part of these broader, in many cases, they're part of these broader networks. They talk to people about their ideas. They talk to people about their beliefs. And their beliefs get reinforced through their interaction with these other people. They're not sitting in the cabin in the woods like Ted Kaczynski who's coming up with this stuff on their own. There is a clear network and community out there. As small as that community might be, it does exist. And when we see this, as we see the Revolution Muslim encourage, as I mentioned, people branching out and doing their own thing. So we get people like our good friend Jihad Jane here, who's very active in this broader community, created 24 different YouTube channels talking about jihadist activity, ultimately arrested in 2009 for trying to put together a plot to target the cartoonist who was responsible for the cartoons of Muhammad that created all the controversy several years ago. She also tried to raise money on Twitter to support jihadis in Pakistan. And ultimately, she was arrested in 2009 for the activity of the cartoonist. But again, you get these independent groups that sort of spring up. I'm going to blow through this. This is a close look. We saw this name earlier, Brian Neal-Venus, is an individual from here in New York City. I got a couple slides on it, but I'm going to blow through some of the deals. The bottom line is just a very interesting individual. Grew up Catholic, converted, no indications early in his life that he had any interest or would go down a path such as this. Had some personal issues, some family issues that sort of made him not happy with the way his life was going. He was grasping for something to attach himself to. He actually tried to join the U.S. military in the aftermath of 9/11. Didn't make it through basic training, which he was distraught about or highly embarrassed about. Ultimately converts to Islam, very quickly gets in with the wrong crowd, and starts going to events and meetings with individuals affiliated with Islamic Thinker Society. Again, you see these names keep popping up, even though the organizations themselves are not conducting these plots. So, interesting kid. He, really quickly, you can see there, he becomes affiliated with ITS, active online, ultimately ends up in Pakistan. Again, ITS, he actually becomes frustrated with ITS because he doesn't see it as being militant enough. He was frustrated with the fact that he felt that all he did was talk and not act. He wanted to act. So he goes overseas, but he actually used some of his connections through other ITS-affiliated folks to go overseas. One of my favorite quotes, again, Mitch Silver, I quote again here, he called him the Forrest Gump of Jihad. I mean, basically, this guy had no right to do what he was ultimately able to do. He didn't have any connections. He didn't speak the language. He just went overseas to Pakistan, and through sheer luck or perseverance, ends up meeting with numerous senior-ranking Al-Qaeda officials. His initial experiences there were not very good. He couldn't make it through a couple weeks training for basic training in the U.S. Army. He certainly wasn't good hiking over mountains with militant organizations in the AFPAC region. And certain people he was with were sort of frustrated with him. At one point, suggested that he become a suicide bomber. There's a nice way for them to get along as well. But he persevered and he kept at it and he didn't quit and ultimately gained the attention of individuals in the Al-Qaeda sphere and spoke with some very senior individuals. Again, this guy who did not have the background that you would think would put him in that position. He ends up there. And then one other individual to take a look at. So I showed you the basketball team earlier. This is our guy, right? Zach Chesser from Northern Virginia. He was, I believe, the guy in the middle holding the ball. If you remember the picture of the basketball team. But here's a kid who grew up in relatively affluent family, neighborhood, does not meet the profile of somebody who you think would go down this path. But nonetheless, here he is. He's an individual who became very obsessed with his interests. His interests changed over time. He was, got really into Marilyn Manson for a while, got really into Japanese anime for a while, sort of bounced around with different fascinations. And ultimately, his next fascination was Islam, and more specifically, he almost converts not to Islam, but almost directly to Jihadism. He does convert to Islam, but then very quickly leaves the mainstream community and becomes interested in jihadist-based activity, becomes very active online, and progresses very quickly from producing his own YouTube videos on his own YouTube channels to putting posts up on more formal and officially linked Al-Qaeda or overseas-based organizations. He was recognized by the leaders of Revolution Muslim as being somebody who had some capabilities and some skill, and so he was actively incorporated into that community. He was a regular poster on the Revolution Muslim website. He created his own website or his own blog. As you see in the bottom left here, the Jihad blog, where he spoke about all these types of issues. He's most well known, however, for the threats that he put out against the writers, creators of South Park. If you recall, several years ago, there were threats against them because they were looking to put out an episode where the word was that they were going to display Muhammad wearing a bear suit. And our good buddy Zach here was not a big fan of that. And so he threatened them on the forums and gained some significant notoriety through that event. Ultimately, of course, if you've seen it, the person in the bear suit ends up being, I think it was Santa Claus, not Muhammad. So they never actually showed you the image, but nonetheless. Zach does try to go overseas. He ultimately tries to take more increased action in his online activity. He tries to travel to Somalia to participate in jihad there, and he's arrested on his way out of the country. And he was convicted for his support for Al-Shabaab and trying to fight with them, as well as for his threats against the South Park guys. But just a very fascinating case of somebody. And these guys are all linked in, right? I mean, he knew Samir Khan, who I mentioned earlier, and they exchanged information online, and he wrote for Samir's online magazine. So I've talked about a lot of names and people and organizations and sort of painted this picture that's probably pretty darn confusing in terms of who these guys are and how they all link together. So I'm going to put a chart up that's going to completely clear it up for you. Right. You guys got it now? We're all good? So obviously you can't read this, but this is a chart that was put together by the University of Maryland and was featured in a U.S. Senate report, or I think it was House Representatives report, that looked at Zach Chesser, and looked at his connections and how he tied back with different individuals. So you can see this stuff is anything but clear, right? There's no hierarchy to it, there's no clear structure. But my point is there's a network here. I mean, these guys aren't lone actors. I mean, look at them, they're all linked together. You've got Zach here, you've got Yusuf al-Muhammad, who I mentioned, Yusuf al-Qatab, who I mentioned, ITS, Revolution Muslim. And the interesting thing about this chart is almost everybody on here are Americans or situated in the United States. So this stuff is going on here. Again, this is not, if you actually count them, it's not a large community. It's not a significant number of people, but it does exist. And so I think it's important to draw a distinction between pure lone wolf activity and something that is part of a broader context. And again, these groups do tie back to overseas elements. You see Al-Qaeda here, linked into certain individuals. There's Al-Shabaab on here somewhere. Anyway, you get the idea. It's a broader network of stuff that's going on. So to try and wrap it up, I'm probably over my time. I apologize for that. But these things happen. We talked at the beginning about the rise of domestic plots in the past few years. And one of the reasons for this activity is the presence of groups and networks like the ones I've talked about. And this stuff doesn't, as I said, just doesn't come from a vacuum. There's groups and networks that openly advocate for jihad. Those doing it openly generally limit their discussions to stuff overseas, to classical jihad, but they're all sort of linked in. And in many cases, these groups do operate legally, which is the challenge that we have. They don't publicly advocate violence. In fact, most of them state that they're against violence here in the United States, and many actually mean it. But the point is they provide forums for people to congregate, in person or online. They provide forums for people to share ideas, share beliefs. They're really sort of echo chambers, right? Places where people can, if you feel something and you believe something that might be a little bit out there, you can find somebody who's going to agree with you. And we see the same thing, particularly in online activity in various deviant cultures and communities, whether you're talking about child predators or other more traditional criminal elements. You can find communities out there where if you can find like-minded individuals, you have a sounding board, you have somebody who's going to agree with you, somebody who's going to tell you, you know what you're saying isn't so crazy. Right? I agree with you. I think you're right. I think this is the way to fix the problems of the world today. Go for it. Right? And while the organizations themselves don't necessarily plan these things, they provide this forum for individuals to get together, exchange ideas, and advance down a path that we clearly don't want to see them going down. Look, there's no AQA or Al-Qaeda in America. There's no formal Al-Qaeda structure here in the United States or formal organization here in the United States. But there are networks. Again, we look at, as I mentioned earlier, speakers later today will talk about the right-wing organizations. There's a much more significant infrastructure, numbers, presence in the United States from these certain groups. The Jihadist entities are much smaller. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the threat is small. Right? As I said, terrorism is not a numbers game. Never has been. So a lot of these guys are kind of knuckleheads, and we've seen that, some of the plots they've cooked up. Some of them are very serious, and so these are the things that we need to look out for. But the point that I want to make with this presentation is while we do have some pure lone wolves out there, most of these guys are connected somehow. And while that might seem somewhat scary when you see that chart I showed up there, it's also somewhat comforting the fact that if somebody's connected, that makes them targetable, right? That means we're able to identify linkages. If we found one guy, we can find linkages to other guys. And that's how a lot of people who've been uncovered have been found out because of their activity online, because of the fact that they reach out and talk to others. So this is an important aspect of this. The last bullets are just to sort of tie a bow on it in terms of today, the death of Al-Awlaki and Khan, significant impact in terms of English language propaganda in the U.S. It doesn't go away. This stuff is still online. People will keep reading it for some time, but it's certainly significant. Revolution Muslim has gone away. They got a little bit too militant online, had some postings advocating violence in the UK. The website was taken down, but of course, as happens online, it was reconstituted with a new group called IslamPolicy.com that Yunus Abdul Muhammad was behind. Much less active, though, and Muhammad was arrested this past year and overseas and extradited back to the U.S. But there have been some posts on here from time to time. So we're in a better place. A lot of these entities have been targeted and have been effectively limited. I wouldn't say neutralized, but limited. But the threat is still there, particularly when you look at the entrepreneurs out there, those who are doing this on their I don't want to contradict myself. Those who are doing this individually on their own, but connected with the broader network and connected with other individuals. So again, the key caveat here is the numbers are small. These are groups that represent disconnected fringe elements of society. These are groups that are actively opposed and actively criticized by the mainstream Muslim community, which is a good thing. But they still exist, and they're groups that we need to keep an eye on if we're going to keep doing our job of preventing these types of activities from happening in the U.S. in the future. So. Any questions?